So this morning I pulled up the Spotify list of the most listened to songs in 2024. I listened to the top 20. I listened to every single one of them from beginning to end. There were some good songs in there, no doubt about it. There were some good songs and some talented songwriters. I could tell that. There was a lot of bubblegum garbage too, in my opinion. Now that's all relative. We all look at this differently. But let's face it, through every decade, going back to the beginning of modern rock music, really starting in the 50s, we've kind of gone through this. There's always going to be the bubblegum and there's always going to be the serious songs, right? And so we've kind of always had that. But one thing about the current time frame is this bubblegum's been going on for quite a long time. And I think a lot of that has to do with electronic music. It enables people who have zero musical skills whatsoever to be able to create interesting sounds at the end of the day. And we have heard practically every sound you could ever hear, and then we've heard it regurgitated over and over and over. Again, some of that is not so unusual, but what we appear to be lacking is the creativity. And I think, and I'm not knocking, look, if you're a home studio user and you're cranking out songs and maybe you don't actually play an instrument, maybe you can't play that keyboard, maybe you can't play drums, but you can pound out a beat on a control surface, on a MIDI control surface for doing that. Hey, if you're making music, more power to you. More power to you. I'm not criticizing any of that, none whatsoever. If it brings you joy, keep doing it. By all means, keep doing it. I think the more music can get created, the better off we all are. The thing I'm quite challenged with, though, is the decline of musicianship. You know, there seems to be somewhat of a resurgence, especially in guitar, but it's taking longer than I would like. And I'm not saying it needs to be guitar-oriented music, but let's face it, you go back to the beginning of time, of throughout history of at least when we know about music, it's always been about musicians and extremely talented musicians being able to bring that song to life where just the person who wrote it can't oftentimes. Not everybody has the talent of Prince. I wish I did. I wouldn't be on here talking to you about this right now. I'd be making incredible music and I would be playing every instrument and I would be amazing, but I am not, okay? So I don't have the blessings that Prince was given and others who kind of fall into that category. But you know, when you go see a band live, even anymore, a lot of modern music is played with background tracks and things like that. And there's a place and a time for it. I understand some of it, but the reality of it is the music always sounds different live than it ever does in the recording. It always sounds better live than it ever did in the recording. And why is that? Because now they put real musicians playing real things and adding elements to it that didn't quite exist before. You see that a lot, not always, but you see that a lot. I think we need a music revolution right now. If you go back and you think about it, let's really start with the 60s. Let's start with the 60s. That was a writing gold mine of mastering the art of bubblegum music. And we needed that, quite frankly, we needed it desperately. We needed songs that people could sing to and have a good time with and get us away from the boring, lackluster, blah, blah, blah of the generation before. And then as the beginning of the change, you saw it in the Beatles, you saw it in the Stones, you saw it in the Who. When we were transitioning from late 60s throughout the 70s, that's when we really had a blossoming of meaningful music. Incredible musicianship across the board, just blew your mind. Lyrical content that you could relate to in your everyday life. It's like when they were singing those lyrics, it was just speaking deep into your soul. And there was so much of it. And yes, of course, there was bubblegum music around all of that, but a lot of it was super powerful and super dominating. Then you get into my kind of generation. I was influenced tremendously by the 70s and the 80s. Although as time has gone by, I'm less likely to admit it about the 80s. because my God, was that a decade of pure cheesy nonsense. Some fun music for sure, but hair metal just, oh my gosh, I can't believe I was so into it at the time. But I still enjoy listening to it. But my gosh, when you think about it today, that was so utterly ridiculous. But at the time, it was awesome. It was great. And rock and roll was alive and music was alive and it was pretty cool, right? But then come the 90s so our first revolution was in the 70s. And this is just my opinion. I'm not speaking on any technical fact. The first revolution was in the 70s, and then we went through it all over again in the 90s. Basically, and if you think about it, the talent, the skill set of the musicians in the 90s was not very good for the most part. They developed their skills as they played live constantly, and they all became better players, but they really weren't talented musicians. But what they could do, just think of, Nirvana and Kurt Cobain. Nothing that he was playing was complicated in any way, but he went about it in a unique way and combined that with lyrical content that was like, holy crap, will you listen to this? How does this one guy speak to so many people, speak to an entire generation? You had the same thing with Pearl Jam and Stone Temple Pilots and Audio Adrenaline, and I could just keep going on and on. Don't get me started on Chris Cornell and how amazing of a singer and songwriter he was. God bless his soul. But, when you look at the transition post the 90s, it was from the 90s to really from the 90s going into 2000 to 2010. It was kind of a mixed pot. There was some great music in there, but it was definitely that transition period. And then really after that time, for at least the last 10, 15 years, much of it is turned into, in my opinion, fun songs, but nothing moving. I got 5 kids, but the oldest being 40 and 30, but then I've got a 20-year-old and twin 18-year-olds. And they're always searching for great musicians, great songwriting. And it's not because I've influenced them, it's what they do, and their friends do it the same. They're going back to the 70s. They're going back into the 90s. They're going back in time and searching that catalog. And you want to think, I think it's great they do, and I want them to experience all of that. But why don't they have that in their generation? Why is that missing? Why are they needing to fill that void with something that you just can't seem to find today? I mean, it's out there. There are bands kind of in behind the scenes that are not widely known that are great musicians, great songwriters, putting out great content, but it's not quite yet embraced by the masses. And you wonder when that's going to happen. And so I'm feeling like, and I'm hopeful, because I'm always hopeful of music, because I believe so much in music, and I want people to be able to create whatever moves them. Whatever moves them. I don't expect it to sound like the past. I want you exploring the sonicscape. Do something no one's ever done before. But at the end of the day, your chances of that song lasting into very long period of time in the future is pretty much about nil. It's nil unless it's a song that people can relate to and being moved by. And so I want to encourage everybody out there, kind of keep that in the back of your minds. I don't. This video is not going to make any difference. It's not going to create massive awareness. But if it starts to have 2 or 3 people start to have a discussion and say, well, what if we were to do this? What if we got away from trying to copy everybody else, which is so much of that today? Everybody's chasing what's popular, and to some degree, there's always been some element of that too. So it almost seems like it's in this vicious cycle, but this cycle can be broken out of. It has been broken out of. It's several different pivotal decades of the past. So I'm hopeful that we'll get another one, because I'm excited about it. I listen to all music. I enjoy it all. I really do. But I also want something that just doesn't seem to be quite there today. And I'd rather go forward than have to go behind to find it. And I guess that's kind of what this video is about. I don't expect this video to even be watched by many people, but if it can start a conversation, why not start it? So do me a favor, leave some comments down below. Tell me what you think. Some of you the trolls will bash me, and so what? Trolls are trolls. But other than that, leave a comment down below. Do you think like me? Do you think I'm just oblivious? I don't know. I'm curious to see what you think. But until next time, hope all of you have a great day. Bye-bye.